My brother called me at 7:23 on a Thursday morning and told me our mother was dead. Then, before I could even process what he'd said, he informed me I wasn't getting a single dollar of her estate. Not the house. Not her investments. Nothing. And then, he hung up. Listen, I'm 42 years old, and what happened over the next 72 hours changed everything I thought I knew about family, about loyalty, about what people will do when money's on the line. This story, man, it still keeps me up at night. My name's Marcus Reed. I work construction in Phoenix, Arizona. Been a supervisor for the last 20 years, building commercial projects across the valley. My wife Jennifer died 2 years back from ovarian cancer. We had one daughter together, Rachel, who's 80 now and studying to be a vet down in San Diego. After Jem passed, I threw myself into work and staying close to my mom. She was my rock through all that grief, you know? The kind of woman who'd drive across town just to make sure I was eating actual meals and not living off pizza and beer. My brother Tyler is 4 years younger than me, 38. Growing up in Tempe, we were tight. Playing baseball in the backyard of our old house, riding bikes to the corner store for candy, typical brother stuff. But as adults, man, we drifted apart. Tyler became this financial consultant type, always chasing the next investment opportunity, always talking about money. He married this woman, Melissa, had 2 kids. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Nice house in Scottsdale, fancy cars, the whole deal. But I'd noticed things over the years. Tyler was always stretched thin, always one bad quarter away from disaster. There were these awkward moments at family dinners where Melissa would mention picking up extra nursing shifts to cover bills, and Tyler would change the subject real quick. Our mom, Barbara Reed, was 68 years old and sharp as hell. She'd been a librarian for 30 years before retiring, could still destroy anyone at crossword puzzles, remembered every birthday and anniversary without writing anything down. She lived by herself in this nice little house in Scottsdale, stayed active, volunteered at the local library twice a week. Then about 7 months ago, Tyler convinced her she needed help managing her finances and medical stuff. He suggested he become her power of attorney, just to handle bills and doctor appointments. Mom was hesitant at first, but Tyler can be persuasive when he wants something, and he was her baby boy, right? She trusted him. That's when everything changed. Within weeks of Tyler getting that POA, Mom was suddenly diagnosed with severe dementia. Tyler moved her into Desert Springs Senior Living, saying she couldn't take care of herself anymore. When I went to visit her, I was absolutely floored. My vibrant, witty mother was sitting in a chair by the window, staring at nothing. She didn't recognize me. She barely spoke. When she did, it was just confused fragments that didn't make sense. I asked her doctor, this guy named Kevin Brennan, how this was even possible. She was fine 2 months ago. Totally fine. He gave me this smooth explanation about how dementia can progress really rapidly in some patients. How cognitive decline at her age can be sudden and devastating. But man, it didn't sit right with me. Something felt off. I visited Mom 3 times a week anyway. Even when she didn't know who I was, I'd sit there, hold her hand, tell her about Rachel, about projects I was working on. Tyler visited too, but way less. And when he did show up, he always seemed rushed, always checking his watch like he had somewhere better to be. So that Thursday morning, I was already up, drinking coffee in my kitchen in Phoenix. The sun was just starting to come up over the mountains. My phone rang, and Tyler's name popped up on the screen. We hadn't talked in maybe 3 weeks. Not since the last tense visit to see Mom. His voice had this fake solemnity that immediately put me on edge. He told me he had difficult news. Mom had passed away the night before, peacefully in her sleep. I set my coffee down because my hands started shaking. I asked him when it happened. Told him I was planning to visit her that afternoon. Tyler cut me off, said the memorial service was scheduled for Saturday. He claimed he'd already authorized a direct cremation because of the state of her remains. Said the paperwork was rushed through. Then his tone shifted, got almost businesslike, cold. He told me that Mom's will was very clear. Everything went to him. The house, her place up in Sedona, her investments, all of it. And I got nothing. He actually said those words. You get nothing. Then he told me not to even think about contesting it. And then he hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at my phone. My mother dead. And Tyler's first priority wasn't to say he was sorry, wasn't to talk about how she went peacefully. It was to make damn sure I knew I wasn't getting any money. To threaten me not to contest the will. Something felt wrong. Really wrong. I tried calling him back 3 times, straight to voicemail. So I did what any normal person would do. I called Desert Springs Senior Living directly. Told the receptionist I was calling about my mother, Barbara Reed, that I'd just heard she passed away last night and wanted to know what happened. There was this long pause on the other end of the line. The woman said she didn't have any record of that. Asked if there was some confusion. Said she'd check Mom's room to be sure. My heart started pounding. Wait. What? A few minutes later, she came back on the line. Her voice was careful, like she was dealing with someone who might be confused or upset. Sir, your mother is fine. She's having breakfast right now in the dining room. Are you sure you have the right information? I felt the floor drop out from under me. Fine? She's fine. I managed to stammer out a thank you, asked her not to mention my call to anyone, especially not to my brother. Then I hung up and just sat there, staring at nothing. My mother wasn't dead. Tyler had called me at 7:23 in the morning to tell me she was gone, to tell me the funeral was Friday, to tell me I was getting nothing from her estate. And Mom was sitting in the dining room eating breakfast. What the hell was happening? I immediately called Rachel in San Diego. She answered sounding worried, asking what was wrong at this hour. I told her what Tyler had said, told her I'd just confirmed with the facility that Mom was alive. And then I said something I never thought I'd say about my own brother. I think Tyler is trying to steal Mom's estate. I think he's planning something. I don't know what, but Rachel... I think this is fraud. Rachel went quiet for a second. Then her voice got serious. Dad, that's elder abuse. That's criminal. You need to call the police. You need to call a lawyer. What are you going to do? I told her I didn't know yet, but I needed to figure it out fast. Because Tyler said the funeral was Saturday. That was 2 days away. 2 days until a funeral for a woman who was very much alive. After I got off the phone with Rachel, I spent the rest of the morning making calls. First, I contacted a lawyer I'd worked with on a construction contract dispute a few years back. Guy named David Torres. I explained the whole situation to him, and David got real serious real fast. He said, if my brother had power of attorney and was misrepresenting Mom's condition, if he was stealing her assets, we were talking about criminal charges. Elder abuse, fraud, maybe even attempted murder depending on what Tyler was planning. But he said I needed evidence. Solid, documented evidence that would hold up in court. Next, I hired a private investigator, woman named Lisa Crawford. She came to my house that afternoon, sharp as hell, gray streaking through her dark hair, carrying this leather portfolio full of notes. She asked me how long Tyler had been POA. I told her 7 months. She asked if Mom was competent before that. I said absolutely. She was volunteering, doing puzzles, living independently. Then suddenly she couldn't remember her own name. Lisa nodded like she'd seen this exact scenario before. Said to give her 48 hours, she'd find out what was happening with Mom's finances and medical records. That evening, I drove out to Desert Springs. Didn't tell anyone I was coming. When I got to Mom's room, she was sitting in her usual chair by the window, staring out at the desert sunset. Her gray hair was thinner than I remembered, her face more lined. But something seemed different that night. Less drugged, maybe. More present. I pulled up a chair next to her, said her name softly. She turned slowly, and those brown eyes met mine. There was something in them, something I couldn't quite place. Recognition? Awareness? Or was I just seeing what I wanted to see? I told her it was me, Marcus, her son. She blinked, her mouth working like she wanted to say something but couldn't get the words out. Then a nurse came in to check her vitals, and whatever moment we'd had just evaporated. Mom went back to staring out the window like I wasn't even there. I drove home through the desert heat, my mind racing in circles. What the hell was Tyler planning? A fake funeral to convince everyone Mom was dead. And then what? Transfer all her assets while everyone thought she was gone? Forged death certificates? It sounded absolutely insane. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was actually kind of brilliant in its pure, twisted audacity. Lisa called me the next morning. Told me I needed to sit down for what she was about to tell me. I sat at my kitchen table, phone pressed against my ear, and she laid it all out. In the past 7 months, Tyler had transferred approximately $320,000 from Mom's accounts into his own. He'd sold her place up in Sedona to some numbered LLC that Lisa was still tracing, but she strongly suspected he was behind it. He'd been maxing out Mom's credit cards, taking cash advances, forging signatures. And here's the kicker. Dr. Kevin Brennan, the doctor who diagnosed Mom's sudden severe dementia. He went to Arizona State with Tyler. They'd been fraternity brothers, friends for 30 years. I felt physically sick. So Mom's dementia diagnosis could be fake? Completely fabricated? Lisa said if Mom was being overprescribed sedatives or antipsychotics without proper medical justification, it would absolutely explain the sudden cognitive decline, the vacant stare, the inability to recognize family. I said that's not just fraud, that's attempted murder. She agreed. Said we needed to prove it, that I should visit Mom again, document everything, maybe try to record conversations with Tyler if possible. That afternoon, I went back to Desert Springs. I had my phone ready to record anything suspicious. But when I got to Mom's room, it was empty. A nurse I didn't recognize was changing the sheets. I asked where my mother was, panic rising in my throat. The nurse said, "Oh, your brother took her out for a drive about an hour ago. Said she needed some fresh air." My blood went absolutely cold. I asked when they left. She said around noon. I ran to the parking lot, but Tyler's black Mercedes was already long gone. I tried calling him. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. 5 times I called him, and every single time it went straight to voicemail. Finally, 3 hours later, they came back. I was sitting in the lobby, watching through the glass doors. Tyler helped Mom out of the car, practically carrying her as she shuffled back inside. She looked exhausted, completely wiped out, barely able to keep her eyes open. Tyler saw me waiting there, and he didn't even try to hide his irritation. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" I stood up, kept my voice level. "You told me Mom died yesterday, yet here she is, very much alive. Care to explain that?" He actually laughed. This short, dismissive laugh. Sadia. Sorry about the confusion. He'd meant to call me back. It was a false alarm. Mom had a really bad episode yesterday, and he thought, well, you know how it is with dementia. Things can change fast. He thought she was declining rapidly, but she stabilized. I asked where he'd taken her today. He said just for a drive. She likes getting out, seeing the desert. I looked at Mom, barely able to stand, and said, "Really?" Because she looks like she can barely keep her eyes open. "What did you do to her?" Tyler's face changed. The fake concern dropped away, and something cold slid into place. His voice dropped, got harder. "Back off, Marcus. I'm her power of attorney. I make the decisions about her care. Not you. You want to challenge that? Get a lawyer. But I'm warning you right now. Don't start something you can't finish. Then he just brushed past me, helped Mom into her room. I watched through the doorway as he settled her into her chair, leaning in close, speaking to her in this low voice I couldn't hear, his hand on her shoulder, gripping tight. Then he walked out without even looking at me, got in his Mercedes, and drove off. I stood there for a long time, trying to decide what to do. Then I left. I was sitting in my truck in the parking lot, about to start the engine and head home, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello? Silence. Then this whisper. A woman's voice, so faint I could barely hear it. She said my name. Marcus. I asked who it was. The voice was so quiet I had to press the phone hard against my ear, close my eyes to focus. And then she said it. Marcus, it's me. It's your mother. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. That couldn't be right. Mom was right there in her room, barely able to speak in complete sentences, and this call was coming from... I pulled the phone away from my ear, checked the screen. Blocked number. The voice kept going, quiet but urgent. Marcus, listen to me carefully. I don't have much time. I need you to come to my room tonight, late, after 11:30. Make sure Tyler isn't around. And Marcus, don't tell anyone about this call. Do you understand? I managed to say yes, but my voice came out strangled. The line went dead. I sat there in the parking lot, the Arizona sun beating down on my windshield, staring at my phone like reality had just cracked wide open. That was impossible. Mom couldn't have called me. She could barely string two words together. She didn't recognize my face. And yet that voice, even whispered and strained, it had sounded like her. Not the confused, drugged woman in that chair, but the real her. The sharp, clear-minded woman I'd known my entire life. My hands were shaking. Saturday was 2 days away. Tyler had scheduled a funeral for a woman who was still alive. He'd stolen over $300,000. He'd taken Mom out for 3 hours and brought her back barely conscious. And now someone who sounded exactly like my mother had just called me from a blocked number to tell me to come see her late at night when Tyler wasn't around. I sat there for another 10 minutes, trying to think clearly. Then I started the truck and drove home. I'd go back at 10. I'd find out what the hell was happening. Because, brother, whatever this was, it was about to get a whole lot worse before it got better. And I had no idea just how deep this nightmare actually went. I waited in my truck outside Desert Springs until 11:45 that night. Tyler's black Mercedes was long gone. The night shift was on, just a skeleton crew. I used my access code to enter through the side entrance and made my way down the quiet hallway to Mom's room. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The door was closed. I knocked softly, then pushed it open. Mom was sitting up in bed, the lights turned down low. When I entered, she turned to look at me. And brother, what I saw in her eyes made me freeze in the doorway. They were clear, focused, completely and utterly lucid. Not the vacant, confused stare I'd seen for 7 months. She was looking at me like she KNEW me, like she'd always known me. She told me to close the door. Not in that confused mumble I'd gotten used to, but in a normal voice. Strong, clear, the voice of the mother I remembered. I shut the door, my hands shaking. Started to ask what was happening, but she cut me off. Told me to sit down, that we needed to talk, and we didn't have much time. I sat in the chair next to her bed, completely stunned. Asked if she was okay, what the hell was going on. And then my mother, who I thought had been lost in the fog of dementia for 7 months, smiled at me. Actually smiled. With that knowing expression I remembered from childhood when she'd caught me and Tyler doing something we shouldn't have been doing. She said she was fine, that she'd been fine this whole time. I couldn't process what I was hearing. Asked about the dementia, the diagnosis, the fact that she couldn't even recognize me for months. She reached over and took my hand. Her grip was firm, steady. Nothing like the weak, trembling hands I'd been holding 3 times a week. She told me she'd been pretending the whole time. All of it was an act. Man, I just sat there. My brain completely shut down. Pretending? For 7 months? She started explaining, and I'm telling you, what came out of her mouth was the most calculated, brilliant, heartbreaking thing I'd ever heard. She said she was 68 years old, had been thinking a lot about mortality, about what happens when she's gone. And she realized she needed to know something. She needed to know which of her sons would actually take care of her when she couldn't give them anything back. Not for her money, not for inheritance, but because they loved her. So when Tyler suggested becoming her power of attorney, she saw an opportunity. She agreed to it. But she also consulted her own lawyer, someone Tyler didn't know about. Some guy she'd known for years who handled everything quietly. And she put most of her assets, almost everything, into an irrevocable trust weeks before Tyler got the POA, the accounts he had access to. She only left enough in them to see what he'd do with it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Asked why she didn't tell me, why she let me think she was sick. Her eyes got sad, said she had to test both of us. Had to see who would visit her when she couldn't give them anything back. Who would hold her hand even when she didn't know their name? Who would show up 3 times a week and just sit there, talking to someone who couldn't even respond? And man, I started crying right there. Couldn't help it. Told her of course I came, of course I visited. She's my mother. She squeezed my hand, said she knew that now, but she had to see it for herself. Had to know it was real. Then she told me about Tyler. Said he failed the test worse than she ever imagined. Every time he visited, he was pressuring her to sign papers. Transferred documents for the house, for her investments, for everything. He'd get angry when she played confused, when she couldn't sign clearly. She'd been documenting everything. Recording conversations on a little device hidden in her room. Every time he came to pressure her. Every time he threatened her. Every time he took something from her room thinking she wouldn't notice. The $320,000? She'd let him take it. Let him dig his own grave with every transfer, every forged signature, every theft. She'd been building a case against her own son for 7 months. I asked about the medications, the sedatives. She said Dr. Brennan was prescribing them, but she wasn't taking them. She'd been palming the pills, hiding them, flushing them, playing the part of someone heavily medicated. It was the only way to make the dementia look real. Then she told me something that made my blood run cold. She said Tyler had told her today, during that 3-hour drive, what his plan was. He said she was going to have an accident, that she'd pass away peacefully tonight. He wanted her to sign papers first, transferring everything, but she refused. Played confused, couldn't hold the pen right. And Tyler was running out of time. He knew it. The funeral was Friday. He'd already made all the arrangements, already told everyone she was dead or dying. He was committed to this plan. I said we needed to call the police right now. This was attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, all of it. Mom shook her head, said no, not yet. Told me that David Torres, my lawyer, he'd been her lawyer too for the past month. They had a plan. But she needed me to trust her. Could I do that? I squeezed her hand and said, always. Over the next day and a half, we set everything up. David brought in the police, but quietly. Detective named Sarah Chun, who specialized in elder abuse cases. They agreed to let Mom's plan play out, to catch Tyler in the act with evidence that would be absolutely irrefutable in court. We installed hidden cameras in Mom's room, tiny things the size of buttons that you'd never notice unless you knew where to look. We coordinated with the nursing home staff, at least the ones we could trust. The director, a woman named Patricia Gomez, was horrified when she learned what had been happening under her roof. She cooperated fully, and Mom continued her act, playing the confused, declining patient whenever Tyler came around, acting like she didn't understand what was happening, where she was, who anyone was. Tyler came twice more before Friday. Wednesday afternoon, he brought papers for Mom to sign, transfer documents for her house in Scottsdale. I watched the video footage later, and man, seeing it was different than just hearing about it. Tyler sitting next to her bed, speaking slowly like she was a child, telling her to just sign here, Mom. Just make your mark. He was trying to help her, he said, trying to protect her assets. She scribbled something illegible, acted like she didn't understand what the paper was. Tyler's frustration was visible, barely contained. His jaw clenched, his hands gripping the pen so hard his knuckles went white. He told her to sign clearly that he was trying to help her. Friday night, the night before the funeral, he came one last time. And brother, this part still makes me sick to think about. He brought a syringe with him, told Mom it was her medication, her regular evening meds. We had it tested later by the lab the police used. It was a massive dose of sedatives, enough to put down someone twice her size, enough to kill her if she was already frail. Mom pretended to be too confused to take it properly, knocked the syringe out of his hand, acted agitated and scared. Tyler got frustrated, left without administering it. But we had it all on video. Him bringing the syringe, trying to inject her, his face when she resisted. Before he left, he smoothed her hair, leaned down close. The microphone picked up what he said. Tomorrow, Mom. Tomorrow you'll finally be at peace. No more suffering, no more confusion. I'll make sure everything's taken care of. I'll make sure your legacy is protected. His tone was almost gentle, like he actually believed he was doing her a favor, like killing his own mother was an act of mercy, not murder for profit. After he left, I went back to Mom's room. We watched the footage together on David's laptop. Mom's face was composed, but I could see tears in her eyes. Told me that was her baby boy, the child she'd raised, fed, protected, loved unconditionally for 38 years. And he just tried to kill her so he could steal her money. I asked if she was sure she wanted to wait until the funeral. It felt dangerous, leaving him free another night. But Detective Chun assured us they had eyes on him, and Mom insisted. She shook her head, said she needed everyone to see. Needed Tyler to expose himself completely in front of the whole family, in front of everyone who'd ever trusted him. She needed them to understand what he was capable of, what he'd been doing for 7 months while pretending to be the devoted son taking care of his sick mother. Saturday morning came. I barely slept. Kept thinking about what was going to happen, what could go wrong. Tyler had booked Sunset Memorial Chapel in Scottsdale. He'd sent out notices to everyone. Cousins I hadn't seen in years called me that morning offering condolences. Told me they'd be there. They were so sorry for my loss. I had to play along. I had to say yes. The funeral was at 3 p.m. Yes, it was very sudden. Yes, we were devastated. Rachel flew in from San Diego that morning. I picked her up from the airport and filled her in on everything. She was furious, horrified, couldn't believe her uncle would do this, but she was ready to play her part. The funeral home was packed by 2:30. Tyler had gone all out. Flowers everywhere. Massive arrangements flanking a large photo of Mom from maybe 15 years ago at the front of the room. He'd written this elaborate obituary, posted it online, full of flowery language about beloved mother and devoted teacher, and after a long illness. I sat in the front row with Rachel. She held my hand, both of us trying to look appropriately grief-stricken. Tyler sat across the aisle with Melissa and their kids. His face was composed, perfectly sorrowful. Melissa kept touching his arm, comforting him. His kids, Tyler Jr. and Amy, looked genuinely devastated. They'd loved their grandmother. They had no idea what their father had been doing. At exactly 3 p.m., Tyler stood up to give the eulogy, walked to the podium at the front, adjusted the microphone, took a deep breath like he was composing himself. Then he started to speak. He talked about Mom's life, her career as a librarian, how she'd touched so many lives, how in her final months she'd been confused, struggling, but he'd been there to take care of her. He'd been honored, he said, that she trusted him with her care, that she'd made him power of attorney because she knew he would protect her interests, manage her affairs, ensure she was comfortable. His voice caught with emotion. Totally fake emotion that I now knew was completely manufactured. He said Mom had always loved him best, had told him so many times. She knew he was the responsible one, the one who would take care of everything. She'd wanted him to have her house, her assets, everything she'd worked for, because she trusted him to use it wisely, to take care of the family. I stood up. Every head in the room turned to look at me. The whole chapel went silent. I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, that was interesting. Asked Tyler if he wanted to tell everyone where Mom really was right now. Confusion rippled through the room. People whispering, looking at each other. Tyler's face went white. He told me to sit down. This wasn't the time. I asked where the body was. Where was Mom's body right now? He stammered that she was being cremated. We discussed this. I said, really? Because I called the crematorium this morning. They don't have her. They've never heard of Barbara Reed. Melissa grabbed Tyler's arm, asked what I was talking about. Tyler's kids were staring at their father, confused and scared. Then the doors at the back of the funeral home opened. Every single person in that chapel turned around. And there, framed in the doorway, backlit by the Arizona sun, was my mother. She walked in slowly, using a walker for support, but her back was straight. Her head was up, and her eyes were sharp and clear and looking right at Tyler. Behind her, 2 Phoenix PD officers in full uniform followed. The room absolutely erupted. People stood up, gasping. Someone screamed. Tyler's daughter Amy burst into tears. His son just stood there with his mouth open. Mom made her way down the aisle, the walker clicking with each step. Everyone pressed back to give her room, staring like they were seeing a ghost. When she reached the front, when she was standing right in front of Tyler at that podium, she stopped. She looked up at him and said, clear as day, hello, son. I'm not dead, but your inheritance is. Tyler's mouth opened and closed like he was trying to form words, but nothing would come out. His face had gone from white to this grayish color, like all the blood had just drained straight out of his body. He gripped the edges of the podium so hard, I thought the wood might crack. Mom just stood there looking up at him, completely calm, completely in control. This woman who'd spent 7 months pretending to be helpless, pretending not to know her own name, was now standing in front of a chapel full of people with absolute clarity and purpose. Tyler finally found his voice, said Mom was confused, that she was sick, that this was all a mistake. Tried to come down from the podium to help her, like he was going to guide her back to the nursing home, like she was having some kind of episode. Mom held up her hand, stopped him cold, told him not to touch her, not to come near her. Her voice was strong, steady, nothing confused about it. Then she turned to face the assembled crowd. There had to be 70, 80 people there. Family, friends, people from the library where she'd worked, neighbors from Scottsdale. And almost all of them were crying now. Some in relief, some in shock, some just completely overwhelmed. She started talking, said she was sorry for deceiving everyone, sorry for making them think she was dying, for making them come to a funeral for someone who wasn't dead. But she'd had to know the truth, had to see what her son would do when he thought she was helpless and vulnerable. And what she found, she said, broke her heart into pieces. One of the police officers stepped forward, introduced himself as Detective Mark Chun from the Phoenix PD Elder Abuse Unit. He said, "Tyler Harrison, you're under arrest for elder abuse, theft over $5,000, fraud, forgery, and attempted murder." Started reading him his rights right there in front of everyone. Tyler tried to deny it. His voice got loud, desperate. Said this was insane, that he'd been taking care of his mother, that she was sick and confused, and this was all a misunderstanding. He looked at Melissa, at his kids, told them it wasn't true, that Mom was lying, that I had somehow manipulated her into this. Mom pulled out a small recording device from her pocket. One of those digital recorders, about the size of a credit card. Said she'd been recording everything for 7 months. Every conversation, every threat, every time Tyler had tried to force her to sign documents transferring her property to him. Every time he'd gotten angry when she played confused. Every time he'd taken money from her accounts, forged her signature, pressured her to make him the sole beneficiary of everything she owned. David Torres stepped forward with a folder, started listing the evidence out loud. $320,000 transferred from Barbara Reed's accounts to Tyler Harrison's personal and business accounts over 7 months. Sale of property in Sedona to an LLC that Tyler controlled, far below market value. Multiple forged signatures on legal documents. Credit card fraud. And finally, attempted administration of a lethal dose of sedatives on the evening of the 6th. The chapel was dead silent, except for someone sobbing. I realized it was Melissa. She was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before in her life. Like the man standing at that podium was a complete stranger. Tyler's daughter Amy was crying hysterically. His son Tyler Jr. just looked stunned, frozen. Both of them had loved their grandmother. Visited her at Desert Springs, brought her cookies and magazines, sat with her even when she didn't seem to know who they were. And now they were finding out their father had been robbing her blind while planning to kill her. Tyler started backing away from the podium. The detective told him to stop, to put his hands where they could be seen, but Tyler wasn't listening anymore. Something in him snapped. He actually tried to run. Pushed past the officer and bolted for the side exit of the chapel. He made it maybe 10 steps before the second officer tackled him. Took him down hard right there on the carpet between the flower arrangements. Tyler hit the ground and they were on him immediately, pulling his arms behind his back, snapping on handcuffs. He was yelling the whole time, saying this was wrong. This was a setup, that I had poisoned Mom against him, that she was sick and didn't know what she was saying. His kids were screaming. Melissa was trying to get to them, to shield them from seeing their father being arrested. People were standing up, some trying to leave, others pulling out phones to record what was happening. The whole thing descended into absolute chaos. They pulled Tyler to his feet. His suit was torn, his face was red, and he was breathing hard. As they started walking him toward the door, he stopped, looked back at Mom standing there with her walker, and he shouted at her that he was her son. She couldn't do this to him. He needed that money. His business was failing. He had debts. He was drowning. She had so much and wasn't even going to be around much longer. It should have been his. He deserved it. Mom watched him being led away. Tears were streaming down her face, but her voice was completely steady when she spoke. She said Tyler was her son, yes, but he stopped being her child the moment he decided her life was worth less than her bank account. The officers took him out. We could hear him still yelling as they put him in the police car outside. Melissa collapsed into a chair, her whole body shaking. Rachel went to her, tried to comfort her even though Melissa had no idea what to say or do. Amy and Tyler Jr. were being held by their aunt on Melissa's side, both of them crying too hard to even speak. Mom stood there in the middle of it all, surrounded by overturned chairs and trampled flowers and crying relatives. She looked so small suddenly, so old. This woman who'd been strong enough to fake dementia for 7 months, who'd been brave enough to let her own son try to kill her just to expose the truth. She just looked exhausted. I went to her, put my arm around her shoulders, asked if she was okay. She leaned into me and said no, she wasn't okay. She didn't think she'd ever be okay again, but it was done. It was finally done. Detective Chun came back in after they'd secured Tyler in the car. Said they'd need statements from both of us, from the nursing home staff, from David, that this was going to be a long process. Mom nodded, said she understood. She'd been preparing for this for months. She had copies of everything. Every recording, every bank statement, every forged document. She'd built an airtight case against her own son. Over the next few hours, the chapel cleared out. People left in shocked silence, in groups whispering to each other, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Some came up to Mom, hugged her, told her they were glad she was okay. Others just stared at us like we were responsible for destroying the family. Melissa eventually came over. Her face was blotchy from crying, her makeup completely ruined. She asked Mom if it was all true. All of it. The theft, the fraud, the attempted murder. Mom just nodded. Melissa asked how long she'd known. Mom said 7 months. Since the day Tyler got power of attorney and started moving money around, Melissa broke down again. Started apologizing, saying she had no idea. She'd thought Tyler was stressed about work, thought maybe he was having a midlife crisis or something, but she never imagined. She couldn't even finish the sentence, just kept saying she was sorry over and over. Mom told her it wasn't her fault. Tyler had made his choices. He'd chosen money over family, greed over integrity, and now he was going to pay the price. Rachel and I took Mom home that night, not to the nursing home, but to my place in Phoenix. Set her up in the guest room. She said she was done with Desert Springs, done with pretending, done with being treated like she was helpless. She wanted her life back, the real one, not the performance she'd been giving for 7 months. We sat up late that night, the 3 of us. Rachel made tea. We didn't really talk about Tyler or the funeral or what was going to happen next. We just sat there, being together, being family. Mom held Rachel's hand and asked about school, about her boyfriend, about her plans for the future. Normal grandmother stuff. Like she was trying to remember what normal felt like. Around midnight, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Melissa. She was calling from her car, said the kids were at her sister's place. She needed to know everything, every detail. How long had this been going on? What exactly had Tyler done? I told her everything. The fake dementia diagnosis, the stolen money, the plan to stage Mom's death, the funeral that was supposed to convince everyone she was gone, so Tyler could liquidate her estate without anyone questioning it, the medication that would have killed her. All of it. Melissa was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said she was filing for divorce. First thing Monday morning. She was getting full custody of the kids. Tyler wasn't going to destroy her children the way he tried to destroy his own mother. She was done. Completely done. I told her I understood. That I was sorry she was caught up in this. She said no, she was sorry. Sorry she hadn't seen it sooner. Sorry she hadn't questioned why Tyler was so stressed all the time. Why he was so secretive about Mom's care. Why he wouldn't let anyone else be involved in making decisions. The signs had been there. She just hadn't wanted to see them. After we hung up, I went back to the living room. Mom was asleep in the chair, her head tilted back, mouth slightly open. She looked peaceful, more peaceful than I'd seen her in months. Rachel was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, reading news articles about what had happened. The story was already spreading. Local news had picked it up. Man arrested at his own mother's funeral for attempting to fake her death and steal her estate. Rachel looked up at me and asked if I thought Tyler would go to prison. I said yes. With all the evidence Mom had, the recordings, the financial records, the attempted murder, yeah, he was going to prison. For a long time. She asked if I felt bad for him. If part of me still wanted to help him because he was my brother. And man, I had to think about that. Really think about it. Tyler and I had grown up together, shared a room for 15 years, played catch in the backyard, got into trouble together. He was my brother, my blood. But blood doesn't excuse what he did. Blood doesn't give you the right to abuse the person who gave you life, to steal from her, to plan her murder. Blood doesn't make you family when you've proven you only care about yourself. I told Rachel no. I didn't feel bad for him, and I wasn't going to help him. Tyler made his choices. Every single one of them. He chose greed over love, money over his mother's life, and now he'd have to live with the consequences. Rachel nodded, said she was proud of me for standing up to him, for protecting Grandma, for doing the right thing even though it meant watching my brother get arrested. I didn't feel proud though. I just felt tired and sad, and grateful that Mom was alive, that we'd caught Tyler before he could actually go through with it. But mostly I felt this deep sense of loss, because I'd lost my brother that day. Not to prison, not to the police. I'd lost him the moment he decided our mother's life was worth less than her bank account. The next few weeks were brutal. Tyler was denied bail. Too much flight risk given the severity of the charges. He got a public defender at first, then hired some expensive lawyer with money I'm pretty sure he didn't have legally. Melissa filed for divorce like she said she would. Got a restraining order. Started the process of protecting her kids and herself from whatever financial mess Tyler had created. The media circus was intense. Local news crews showed up at my house, at Mom's old place in Scottsdale, at Desert Springs. Everyone wanted the story. The woman who faked dementia to catch her son trying to kill her. It was sensational. It was dark. And it was absolutely true. Mom handled it with grace. Did one interview with a local journalist, explained calmly what she'd done and why. Said she hoped her story would help other families recognize the warning signs of financial elder abuse. That power of attorney was a sacred trust, and when it was violated, the consequences should be severe. Dr. Kevin Brennan lost his medical license within a month. The medical board investigated, found that he'd been prescribing dangerous medications to an elderly patient without proper evaluation, all at the behest of his college friend. He tried to claim he didn't know what Tyler was planning, but the evidence showed otherwise. He was complicit, and now his career was over. 3 months later, Tyler took a plea deal. His lawyer advised him that going to trial would be suicide given the evidence. So he pleaded guilty to elder abuse, fraud, theft, and attempted manslaughter. They dropped the attempted murder charge in exchange for his plea. He got 6 years in prison. Was ordered to repay the $320,000 he'd stolen, plus $75,000 in fines and court costs. Lost his financial consulting license permanently, and he'd be a convicted felon for the rest of his life. I went to the sentencing. Sat in the back of the courtroom. Mom didn't want to go, said she'd seen enough of Tyler to last a lifetime, but I needed to be there. Needed to see it through to the end. Tyler looked different. Thinner, older, prison clothes instead of his expensive suits. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, he stood up and apologized. Said he was sorry for what he'd done, that he'd been desperate, that he'd made terrible choices. But he never looked at me, never acknowledged that I was there. It was all just words, empty, meaningless words. When they led him away, he looked back one time. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I don't know what he saw on my face. Anger, maybe. Disappointment. But I know what I saw in his. Nothing. Just emptiness. My brother was gone. Had been gone for a long time. Maybe years before any of this started. And I was only just now seeing it clearly. 6 months after Tyler's sentencing, life started to find a new normal. Not the old normal. That was gone forever, but a different kind of stability. One built on truth instead of pretense. Mom moved into a small condo about 10 minutes from my place in Phoenix. She was done with the big house in Scottsdale. Done with maintaining property she didn't need. She wanted to be close to family. Close to me and Rachel when she came to visit. She sold the Scottsdale place, used some of the money to set up a fund I'll tell you about in a minute. She started volunteering again. Not at the library this time, but at a place called the Arizona Elder Protection Center. They help seniors who are being financially abused by family members. Mom would go there twice a week, talk to people who were going through what she'd gone through, share her story, help them recognize the warning signs, how to protect themselves, how to report abuse. She became this advocate, this voice for people who couldn't speak up for themselves. And man, watching her do that, seeing her turn something so dark into something that actually helped people, I don't know how to describe it. Proud doesn't cover it. She'd been through hell and came out the other side, determined to make sure fewer people had to experience what she did. Rachel graduated and got a job at a marine research facility in San Diego. She calls Mom twice a week, visits once a month. They're close in a way they weren't before. I think going through all this, seeing how fragile family can be, made Rachel appreciate what we have, what's real. Melissa got full custody of Amy and Tyler Jr. The divorce was finalized 4 months after Tyler's sentencing. She kept the house, got child support that Tyler obviously couldn't pay from prison, and started rebuilding her life. It wasn't easy. The kids were devastated, angry, confused. They loved their dad. And now they had to reconcile that love with the fact that he'd tried to murder their grandmother for money. Melissa brought them to see Mom a few times. Supervised visits where they could talk, where Mom could explain in her own words what happened. Why she did what she did. The first visit was rough. Amy was 14, couldn't stop crying, kept asking why Papa would do that. Tyler Jr. was 17, angry at everyone. Angry at his dad for doing it, angry at Mom for turning him in, angry at me for not stopping it somehow. But Mom handled it beautifully. Told them their father made bad choices, but that didn't mean they had to stop loving him. It just meant they had to understand that love doesn't excuse wrong behavior. That family means protecting each other, not hurting each other for personal gain. She told them she'd always love them, that they were her grandchildren, and nothing would change that. Not what their father did, not the trial. Not the prison sentence. Nothing. Over time, the kids softened. Started visiting on their own. Amy would come over and do homework at Mom's kitchen table while Mom made cookies. Tyler Jr. started asking me about construction work, wanted to learn a trade instead of going to college right away. Said he didn't trust the corporate world anymore. Didn't want to end up like his dad. Wanted to work with his hands, build something real. I took him on as an apprentice. He works with my crew now. Good kid. Hard worker. Quiet. Keeps to himself mostly, but he's reliable. Shows up on time. Doesn't complain. I think he's trying to prove something. Maybe to himself. Maybe to his dad. That he's different. That he won't make the same mistakes. Me? I went to see Tyler once, about 8 months into his sentence. I don't really know why I went. Curiosity, maybe. Closure. Part of me needed to look him in the eye one more time. The prison visiting room was exactly like you'd imagine. Gray walls, metal tables, guards watching everything. Tyler came out in his orange jumpsuit, looking smaller somehow. Like prison had physically shrunk him. He sat down across from me. Didn't say anything at first. just stared at the table. I asked how he was doing. Stupid question, but I didn't know what else to say. He shrugged, said he was alive. That's about all you can ask for in here. Then he asked about Mom, if she was okay. If she hated him. I told him Mom was fine, that she'd moved on with her life. Started volunteering, helping other people avoid what she went through. As for hating him, I said I didn't know. She didn't talk about him much, didn't ask about him. It was like he'd become this closed chapter in her life that she didn't want to reopen. Tyler nodded like he expected that. Then he asked about his kids. I told him Melissa had custody, that they were doing okay considering everything. That Tyler Jr. was working with me, learning construction. That Amy was doing well in school. He got tears in his eyes at that. Said he'd destroyed everything. His family, his career, his relationship with his mother. All for money he didn't even get to keep. I asked him why. Why did he do it? Was it really just about the money? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said it started small. Just borrowing a little from Mom's account to cover a business expense. He told himself he'd pay it back. But then his business kept struggling, and he kept borrowing more. And at some point, he crossed a line where he couldn't pay it back even if he wanted to. So he just kept going, kept stealing. And eventually, he convinced himself Mom wouldn't even miss it. She was old. She didn't need that much money. She wasn't going to live forever anyway. It became easier to justify each theft, each forged signature. Until he was in so deep, the only way out was to make sure Mom wasn't around to discover what he'd done. He looked up at me finally, asked if I could ever forgive him. If the family could. And brother, I didn't know how to answer that. Part of me wanted to say yes. Wanted to be the bigger person, offer forgiveness, help him find redemption. But the truth is, I didn't forgive him. Not then. Maybe not ever. What he did wasn't just stealing. It was betrayal on a level I couldn't wrap my head around. He looked our mother in the eye, knowing she trusted him completely, and tried to kill her. I told him I didn't know about forgiveness. That wasn't my decision to make. He'd have to live with what he did, and we'd have to live with the consequences of his choices. But I wasn't going to pretend everything was okay. It wasn't okay. It would never be okay. He nodded, said he understood. We sat there for a few more minutes in silence. Then I got up to leave. He called after me, asked if I'd come back, if I'd visit again. I said maybe. But I haven't been back since, and honestly, I don't think I will. Tyler made his choices. I'm not responsible for helping him live with them. Mom and I established something called the Barbara Reed Elder Protection Fund with part of the money Tyler had returned. It provides free legal assistance to seniors who are fighting financial abuse cases. Covers lawyer fees, investigator costs, all of it. Because most elderly people being abused by their own family members don't have the resources Mom had. They can't afford private investigators or expensive lawyers. They're trapped. The fund also does educational programs. Sends people into senior centers, retirement communities, nursing homes. Teaches them about power of attorney, about the warning signs of financial abuse, about their rights. How to protect themselves before it's too late. In the first year, we helped 43 people. 43 families where someone was stealing from an elderly parent or grandparent. Some cases were as extreme as Tyler's. Others were smaller. A grandson taking $20 here and there, thinking grandma wouldn't notice. But it all mattered. It all hurt. And we were able to help. Mom spoke at a conference once about elder abuse. I went with her, sat in the audience listening to her tell her story to a room full of lawyers and social workers and law enforcement. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Talked about how she'd faked dementia, how she'd recorded her own son trying to steal from her and eventually trying to kill her, how she'd orchestrated the funeral reveal. People were crying, standing ovation when she finished. And afterward, probably a dozen people came up to her, shook her hand, told her their own stories of family members who'd been abused, thanked her for being brave enough to speak out. That's when I really understood what she'd done. It wasn't just about catching Tyler or protecting herself. It was about exposing a problem that happens way more than anyone wants to admit. Family members stealing from the elderly, isolating them, drugging them, sometimes killing them, all for inheritance money they feel entitled to. One evening about a year after everything happened, Mom and I were sitting on my back patio. Sun was setting over the desert, painting everything orange and pink. She had a mug of tea, wrapped in a blanket even though it was still warm outside. I was drinking a beer, feet up on the railing. She asked me if I missed Tyler. The real question behind the question: did I regret what happened? Did I wish we'd handled it differently? I thought about it for a while. Told her honestly that I missed the brother I thought I had. The guy I grew up with, who taught me how to throw a curveball, who was there when Dad died. But that person, I don't think he existed anymore. Maybe he never did. Maybe I just saw what I wanted to see. She nodded, said she felt the same way. That she'd been mourning the son she thought she raised. The baby boy she'd loved unconditionally for 38 years. But somewhere along the way, that boy had made choices that turned him into someone she didn't recognize. I asked if she regretted the test. Faking the dementia, putting herself through 7 months of pretending to be helpless just to see what Tyler would do. She was quiet for a long time. Finally said she regretted that it was necessary. Regretted that her own son could fail so spectacularly. But she didn't regret finding out the truth. Because at least now she knew. At least now she could protect herself and help protect others. If she hadn't done it, Tyler would have eventually succeeded. She'd be dead. He'd have stolen everything, and no one would have known the truth. This way, at least justice was served. I told her I was proud of her. That what she did took more courage than I could imagine. She squeezed my hand, said I'd passed the test too. Not just by visiting her when she couldn't respond, though that mattered, but by fighting for what was right even when it meant standing against my own brother. By choosing integrity over family loyalty when family loyalty meant covering up crimes. That's what family does, she said. Real family, not blood, not obligation. Real family protects the vulnerable. Real family does the right thing even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. We sat there in comfortable silence as the sun finished setting. Inside, I could hear my phone buzzing. Rachel probably calling for our weekly check-in. Life moving forward. New rhythms, new routines. Different than before, but maybe better in some ways. More honest, more real. Mom looked at me and said something I'll never forget. She said blood doesn't make you family, Marcus. Love does. Showing up does. Doing the right thing when it costs you something does. Tyler was her blood, but he stopped being family the moment he decided her life was just an obstacle to her bank account. I asked what the saddest part was. What haunted her most about everything that happened? She thought about it, then said if Tyler had just asked, if he'd just been honest about his financial problems, about struggling, she would have helped him. Not with everything. Not enabling bad choices or bailing him out of his own mistakes. But she would have helped. Given him a loan, maybe. Helped him restructure his business. Something. Instead, he chose to steal. Chose to lie. Chose to treat her like she was already dead. Like her life didn't matter anymore. And that choice cost him everything. His freedom, his family, his children's respect. All of it gone because he couldn't ask for help. Because he felt entitled to take what wasn't his. The thing about family, she said, the real kind, not just the blood kind, is it's about showing up. It's about loving someone even when they can't give you anything back. It's about fighting for what's right even when it means standing against your own brother. Tyler made his choices. He chose greed over love, He chose theft over integrity. And now he's paying the price. Not just in prison time, but in losing everything that actually mattered. So here I am, 18 months after that phone call at 7:23 in the morning. 18 months since my brother told me our mother was dead and I was getting nothing. 18 months since I discovered she was alive, but she'd been testing us. That Tyler had failed in the worst way imaginable. Mom turned 70 next month. We're throwing her a party. Nothing huge, just family and close friends. Rachel's flying in from San Diego. Melissa and the kids are coming. Some people from the Elder Protection Center. People whose lives Mom has touched through her advocacy work. She's doing well. Better than well, actually. She's got more energy now than she did before any of this started. Volunteers 4 days a week instead of 2. Took up painting classes. Joined a book club. She's living her life fully, completely, without pretending anymore, without testing anyone. Just being herself. The Elder Protection Fund has helped over 100 families now. We've expanded it beyond Arizona, started working with organizations in California and Nevada. Mom's story got picked up by a national news outlet last year, and the donations started pouring in. People who'd experienced similar situations, who wanted to help others avoid what they went through. It's become something bigger than we ever imagined. Tyler Jr. is still working with me. He's one of my best apprentices now, learning the trade and working harder than guys twice his age. He's getting serious with a girl he met at community college. Even mentioned he's saving for a ring, but specifically said he didn't want his dad involved in his future. Said he'd made peace with what happened, but that didn't mean he wanted Tyler at important moments in his life. I understood that completely. Amy's doing great too. 16 now, wants to be a social worker. Says she wants to help families like ours, families torn apart by greed and addiction and bad choices. She visits Mom every weekend, helps her prepare presentations for the Elder Protection Center. They're close in a way that probably wouldn't have happened if none of this had occurred. Silver lining, I guess. Melissa moved on. Started dating someone new, a teacher from Amy's school. Seems like a good guy. Patient with the kids, respectful of their situation. Doesn't try to replace Tyler, just tries to be present and supportive. That's all anyone can ask for. As for Tyler, he's got 4 more years left on his sentence. I haven't visited since that one time. Rachel went once, said it was awkward and sad and she probably wouldn't go back. Mom refuses to go at all. Says she's made peace with losing him, that visiting would just reopen wounds that need to stay closed. He writes letters sometimes, to Mom, to Melissa, to his kids. Apologizing, explaining, asking for forgiveness. Most of them go unanswered. Melissa told me she reads them but doesn't respond. Says she doesn't know what to say to the man who tried to murder his own mother for inheritance money. The kids don't read them at all anymore. They've moved on. I think about the whole situation sometimes. Late at night when I can't sleep, or when I'm driving to a job site and my mind wanders. I think about how close Tyler came to succeeding. If Mom hadn't been as smart as she was, as brave as she was, he would have killed her. Would have staged her death, collected the inheritance, and no one would have known the truth. He'd still be living his life, still be married, still have his kids' respect. But Mom did figure it out. She was 10 steps ahead of him the entire time. And in the end, that made all the difference. The crazy thing is, I understand how it started. Not justifying it, but I understand. Financial pressure. Bad decisions compounding. The feeling of desperation when you're drowning and can't see a way out. Tyler's business was failing. He was in debt. He saw Mom's money sitting there, thought she wouldn't miss it, thought he'd pay it back eventually. But that's how it always starts, isn't it? Just a little bit. Just this once. I'll fix it later. And then you're in too deep, and the only way out is to go deeper. Until you're planning your mother's funeral while she's still alive, trying to figure out how to stage her death without anyone getting suspicious. What I don't understand, what I'll never understand, is how he could look her in the eye and do it. How he could sit next to her bed, hold her hand, and try to inject her with a lethal dose of sedatives. That's not desperation. That's not financial pressure. That's something darker. Something broken inside him that I didn't see until it was too late. Mom says people show you who they really are when they think no one's watching, when they think there are no consequences. Tyler showed us exactly who he was. And we had to accept that reality, as painful as it was. I got something valuable from all this, though. I learned what real family looks like. It's not about blood. It's not about obligation or tradition or who you're related to. It's about showing up. It's about doing the right thing, even when it costs you something. It's about protecting the people you love, even from other people you love. Rachel said something to me a few months ago that stuck with me. She said most people never have to choose between family members like I did. Never have to decide whether to protect their mother or protect their brother. But when that choice came, I didn't hesitate. I chose the person who needed protecting over the person doing the harm. And that's what family does. Mom's sitting in my living room right now as I'm telling you this story. She's reading a book, drinking tea, completely at peace. Safe, protected, alive. And that's what matters most. Not the money Tyler stole. Not the years he's spending in prison. Not the family gatherings that are smaller and quieter now because he's not there. What matters is that Mom is here. That she gets to watch her grandchildren grow up. That she gets to help other people avoid what she went through. That she gets to live her life on her own terms, without pretending, without testing, without wondering if the people around her love her for who she is or what she has. That's the legacy of all this. Not the court case or the arrests or the media coverage, but the fact that one woman was brave enough to expose the truth, even when that truth destroyed her family. And in doing so, she saved herself and helped save countless others. And that's my story, man. That's how my brother tried to steal everything from my mother and ended up losing everything himself. That's how a phone call at 7:23 on a Thursday morning changed my entire family forever. So I gotta ask you something. Was my mom right to do what she did? To fake dementia for 7 months just to test which son really loved her? Part of me thinks maybe there was an easier way. Maybe she could have just confronted Tyler when she first noticed money missing. But honestly, I don't think that would have worked. Tyler was too far gone by then, too committed to the lie. And we needed the evidence to stop him permanently. Looking back now, man, the warning signs were everywhere. Tyler always stressed about money. Always secretive about his business. The way he pushed so hard to get that power of attorney. How quickly Mom's diagnosis came after he got control. How he wouldn't let anyone else be involved in her care. If you've got an elderly parent and someone's pressuring them about power of attorney, about changing their will, about signing documents they don't understand, pay attention to that. Trust your gut. Those red flags exist for a reason. And hey, I want to know where you guys are listening from. What time is it where you are right now? I'm curious how far this story traveled, you know? Sitting here in Phoenix telling you about the worst year of my life. It's strange to think about people all over hearing it. And listen, if you've got your own story, been betrayed by family, watched someone you trusted steal from someone you love, whatever it is, share it down below. Seriously, your story matters. You might help someone else recognize the signs before it's too late. You might be the next person telling their story right here, helping other people avoid what you went through. Take care of yourselves, brothers. Protect the people who can't protect themselves. And remember, blood doesn't make you family. Love does. Showing up does. Doing the right thing when it costs you everything. That's what makes you family. Stay strong out there.